Acolytes, welcome back to After Plague, and today we're going to be going through my March and April reading wrap-ups. If you're wondering why they're combined, I read one book in March that was not part of the same like teenage vampire romance series. I'm going to make a longer video about that series because it is insane. I figured you guys wouldn't want that short of a video because I'm going to be saving most of the content involving that series for its own independent video. Other housekeeping things. It's a rainy day today, so if you hear any noise in the background, any thunder, any rain, I apologize. And also if the lighting is a little bit like cooler / darker than usual, I don't have any sunlight right now. So that's that. I think we nailed it. Now to find out by filling in the numbers, which is always the most terrifying part. Hey, perfect. So now that we've got our calendar here, we can fill in the dates for each of our books. We should do the key before decorating because I run into that problem a lot. And I didn't finish that until the 30th, so. I know I read it in short bursts. I don't want it to look like it took me the whole month to read this book. So I read it from the 16th through the 18th, and then like took a pause, and then picked back up reading it on the 28th. So it didn't take me like 3 weeks to finish this book. I just took a break. Let's get the book club books in for this month as well. Oh, do I not have scissors with me? That's a silly thing to forget. Got them. I ran all the way to my bedroom to get them. I sprinted at top speed. I still had faith at this point that the good book would come back. I no longer have that faith, unfortunately. How cute is that? Oh, do not yell. Look at that, perfect. So that's all of the information on this page done. Obviously, it still needs to be decorated. Did it too low, but that's okay. It's what makes it charming. It's charming because it's done by hand. If it was perfect, I would print it. The theme that I have for this month is snakes / ferns. See, I have all of these little ferns that I think are pretty cute. I have some snake anatomy pieces, some snanatomy, as well as some scale texture. I also have some larger snake photos. That's it on one side. I kind of want to pull it up a little bit. Please don't tear. You shall not defeat me, you dang piece of paper. Well, you're a sticker actually, not a piece of paper. Aha! Ah! Ah! Static electricity, you know, it gets me. So after a little more decorating, this is what we have for our reading tracker page. Nice little green theme in terms of decorating. I'm very happy with how this looks. Let's do the review pages. So now we're going to get into the actual book reviews. And I just want to let you know that I do go into spoilers. So whenever I'm about to go into spoiler territory, I will put this on the screen and I will play this noise. All right, let's start with Dark Matter. Jason Destined was a normal man with a normal life, a teaching position at a university, and a wife and child who he loves dearly. But when he's abducted one night by a masked assailant, his life will be thrown into turmoil. He's knocked unconscious, and when he comes around, he's in a place he doesn't recognize, surrounded by people in hazmat suits. The world he's woken up in is not his own, and he'll do anything to get back to his family. I'm not typically someone who enjoys science fiction. I find that often it just doesn't connect with me on a story level, but I really enjoyed Dark Matter. It's a story about the multiverse, which makes it even more complicated. My usual gripe with the multiversal idea is that most people writing about it fundamentally misunderstand the way it would work. Each millisecond is resulting in slightly different choices, meaning there are an infinite number of the protagonists across the multiverse attempting to accomplish the same end goal. This means that if an infinite number of protagonists are in branching universes that are all trying to get back to the same universe, they should all overlap. In Dark Matter, Blake Crouch actually gets this 100% correct. I have never seen this done before, but because infinite versions of Jason are trying to get back to the same reality, multiple Jasons begin appearing in the original reality. All of them are our version of Jason, they just branch off from him. I like this a lot, but I also hate it because a ton of these versions of Jason also deserve to be back home with their wife and son. And the only one we really get to see have that happy ending is the version of Jason that we have been following throughout the story. I also think it's kind of hilarious that this entire world, this entire universe, is essentially going to be overrun with Jasons. Like, this section of the multiverse is totally ruined because of the switch that other Jason did with original Jason. I liked Jason as a character, and he's really clever, which makes him more fun to read about. His solutions to his problems are usually well thought out, and they don't necessarily feel like he's just floundering. I like that he never even really considered staying in other Jason's life despite the success. He only ever wanted to return to his family. I also really enjoyed the different worlds that Jason travels through on his way home, though we got back to plain versions of Chicago a little bit too quickly. The writing was a bit dry at times, especially when the author was trying to explain anything technical. I don't know enough to say if the explanation makes any sense because it all involves theoretical quantum physics. The box that's used to travel between worlds also functions in a very interesting way, though, again, I'm not sure I ever fully grasped it. There's something to do with timing and making the brain go into superposition. I don't know. I never really picked it up, but it's not really important for your enjoyment of the story. I enjoyed Dark Matter, but I can't say it's for everyone. If you're not a fan of multiverse stories, you will not like this book. But if you like a story that bends to the breaking point and then beyond, Dark Matter is the book for you. I gave Dark Matter 4 stars. All done with our first review page. Usually I put like a little strip of gold leaf at the top just for a little bit of extra decoration. You can see like here on a previous month. However, I am running out of gold leaf. This is all that I have left, and I want to make sure I have enough to use if I want to decorate the collage. So no gold leaf this month. Done with dark matter. And now every other single book I read this month was the House of Night series. I read so many of them. I read all of the House of Night series these last 2 months, and I want to make a longer, more in-depth video about the series and how batshit insane it is, so these reviews might be a little more brief than usual. Just letting you know that I am going to go more in-depth and talk about the crazy stuff that happened. So the first book in the House of Night series is Marked. Zoe Redbird is marked by a vampire tracker, leaving a blue crescent moon on her forehead, the sign of the goddess Nyx. After an encounter with the goddess, her crescent becomes filled in and she's gifted with powerful affinities for all 5 elements: air, fire, water, earth, and spirit. She goes to the House of Night, a finishing school for vampire fledglings, and discovers that the leader of the Dark Daughters, the school's most elite organization, is misusing her affinity. Zoe has to take her down. The first book in the House of Night series is so bad. It's way worse than I remember. But also comparing it to the other books in the series, this one is incredibly grounded. Also, I was way too young to be reading these books when I was like 8 or 9. There are so many slurs, specifically the F slur and the R slur. There's also an insane amount of slut shaming. It's directed mostly at Aphrodite, who is kind of like our bitchy popular girl. She's the leader of the Dark Daughters, that kind of thing. It's particularly egregious because throughout the series, Aphrodite, slut supreme, according to the books, dates one guy. Like, incredibly loyal, loves this man to death. She dates one guy. And Zoe dates like 6 different dudes, often at the same time. It's fine. It's fine. Speaking of Zoe, she is so annoying. She's entitled and rude and really bitchy while thinking of herself as way better and more enlightened than others. She's horrible. It's not the best book in the series. Again, it's not the best book in the series, and it's largely inconsequential in relation to the larger plot, but this is sort of just the introduction to the world, so that's okay. It is also one of the books that is coherent, so I have to give it some props for that, I suppose. I gave Marked 1.5 stars. The next book is Betrayed. In this book, Zoe has become a high priestess in training and is settling into the House of Night. But that fragile peace is shattered by some human teenagers ending up dead, seemingly drained of blood. Evidence points towards vampires, but Zoe wonders if it could have something to do with the strange red crescent fledgling she's been seeing on House of Night grounds. Uh-oh. We've peaked on book 2 of the series. I'm warning you that this is as good as it gets. There's a really solid mystery at the center of the story with the red fledglings. It's truly intriguing, and it becomes an escalating problem as human teens start being killed. I naively thought that this might lead to escalating tensions between humans and vampires, but it does not. Anytime humans start to catch on, the vampires just offer an unbelievable explanation, like a serial killer or gang violence, and it works every time. Zoe is still totally insufferable in this book, especially because she's still calling Aphrodite a hoe while cheating on her boyfriend Eric with her ex-boyfriend Heath. She's just such a hypocrite, it makes me want to tear my hair out. The rest of the nerd herd is fine. I think they're likable enough, but ultimately they're really shallow. I did care about Stevie Ray, and it was sad that she died. There's a lot of stuff that seems important in these books that isn't. For example, the Dark Daughters, Zoe's family, Zoe's stepdad and his ties to the people of faith, the community outreach program, etc. None of it really comes up after book 4. Anyway, I give Betrayed 2.5 stars. That's as good as it's gonna get with this series. Clearly I had a lot more to say about it than I thought I did. In Chosen, Stevie Ray is back from the dead as a new red fledgling, but the sweet girl Zoe knew is gone. She's struggling to fight her lust for blood and keep a grip on her humanity. Zoe, meanwhile, is juggling 3 boyfriends and keeping secrets from her friends. To top it all off, vampires are starting to turn up dead, and it looks like the people of faith might have been involved. But is that the truth? And how can Zoe help Stevie Ray regain her humanity before it's too late?
Chosen has some strong parts and some not as strong parts. I like the continuation of the storyline with the Red Fledglings. I think this is the strongest overarching plot in the series, and it basically gets wrapped up at the end of this book. Turning Stevie Ray into a Red Fledgling was also a great way to drag Zoe into this story and away from her boy drama. I also like that Aphrodite is becoming a more central character. She is such a bitch, and I love her immensely because of it, though she's still obviously being treated horribly. Despite that, she is always down to help. She's like my favorite character. In this book, Zoe is dating one of the professors, Lauren, and it's gross and predatory. I'm not sure if it was originally meant to be. I think so because of the direction they take him in the next book. It does make a lot of the interactions in this book very uncomfortable. It makes a lot of reading the story feel very uncomfortable because you're essentially watching somebody be groomed. Uncomfortable. I think this is also my favorite version of our series-long villain, Nefret. Later in the series, when the secrecy is dropped, she becomes a little flanderized, but I enjoy the subtler struggle of figuring out how to battle someone with such a strong reputation in their community. I could imagine that struggle would be resonant with teenagers. I would give Chosen 1.5 stars. Untamed is kind of the end of the first season of House of Night. So in this book, Zoe's friends are pissed at her for keeping so many secrets from them, as they should be, so they leave her to deal with Nefret's increasing threat on her own. Things become even more dire when an ancient prophecy threatens to awake something that will wreak havoc on not just the House of Night, but the entire world. Again, this is like a season finale for the first season of House of Night. This is also where the lore and the logic really start to break down. Nefret is trying to raise an ancient being from underneath the school who has ties to Cherokee legend. His name is Kelowna. He's like a big winged angel, I guess. I don't really hate the idea of him because he does get integrated into the story pretty well later on. But his introduction and the introduction of the Raven Mockers, who are like these raven spirits that are also his kids, it shifts the world away from the vampires and towards a more general magical reality. From this point forward, the cast might as well be magical humans because there's not a lot of like vampire stuff going on. Zoe finally gets some comeuppance for lying to her friends and cheating on her boyfriends, and the only person who is still in her corner is Aphrodite. She literally convinces Zoe's friends to forgive her, and they do pretty quickly, so it's not like the consequences last for very long. The Red Fledglings also continue to be relevant and a threat to the characters going forward, and I really like that they weren't one of the dropped plots. It's also pretty cool seeing Stevie Ray step into a leadership role around them. I don't know. The book was fine, but it's kind of all downhill from there, so I give Untamed 1.5 stars. Hunted is the most pointless book in the series, so the synopsis is literally just like 2 sentences. Nefret has a powerful new consort in Kelowna who seems to have some strange, soul-deep draw over Zoe. Can she resist his alluring call, or will she doom the world? That's it. You might be thinking, damn, that summary was a lot shorter than the others. I wonder why. And I will tell you why. It's because nothing happens in this book. I can tell you the whole plot right now. Ready? Everyone rushes to the tunnels under the train depot so Stevie Ray can recover from being shot by Stark, the newest Red Fledgling with an affinity for archery. Zoe goes above ground, is injured, and has to return to the House of Night for medical attention. They leave the House of Night and return to the tunnels. The end. Seriously. Seriously, that's the entire plot. The only part I really enjoyed was the return of Heath. I really love him. He's such a himbo, and I think his romantic dynamic with Zoe is the best out of all of her love interests. I also really liked that the series kind of flirts with polyamory. It's apparently really common for high priestesses to have a vampire mate and a human consort, so Zoe could have both, but unfortunately we don't go in that direction. I think it would have been the best resolution, though. I like Stark as a character for the most part, at least in these early books, but I think his affinity is so overpowered. He can shoot an arrow from anywhere in the whole world and hit what he's aiming at as long as he's concentrating on it. So he can shoot an arrow in the United States and hit something in Australia. The authors never really use him to solve any of the plot's problems because he's so overpowered. It's a bit weird. But I would give Hunted 1 star. This book sucked. Next up is Tempted. Zoe and her friends banished Kelowna from Tulsa, but a vision from Aphrodite shows that if they don't deal with the immortal for good, he'll exact vengeance on the entire world. In the meantime, Stevie Ray has found an injured Ravenmocker, Refame, Kelowna's first and most favored son. Against her better judgment, she decides to nurse him back to health. So the most interesting thing about this entry in the House of Night series is that we finally get out of Zoe's head sometimes. There are multiple POVs in this book. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't really make the books much better, but it does allow us to have some interesting B-plots. I think Tempted starts out strong in that regard. Zoe's main problem is still romance and the attraction she feels towards Kelowna, so getting Stevie Ray's story is literally a lifesaver. Stevie Ray and her relationship to Refame is really interesting. It makes sense that she would be sensitive towards his situation, considering that she has only recently regained her humanity. She believes that Refame can make the same choice, and it also gives the story a connection to Kelowna that isn't purely antagonistic, which opens up the idea of redemption for him later on. However, Refame and Kelowna have been evil for centuries. I don't think it's as easy for them to be redeemed as it is for Stevie Ray. I don't know if they should have been redeemed. Which brings me to my next point. It's really weird how many men in this story are rapists, and we're just supposed to get over it and watch them get redeemed because they're love interests. Kelowna, Refame, and even Stark is implied to have assaulted women. It's really weird, and it makes them way harder to redeem. It's also really inappropriate for the target demographic, which again is like 11 to 14, I guess. It's not appropriate. I give Tempted 1.5 out of 5 stars. These books still suck. They suck bad. All done with all of our review pages. I might do a little bit of decorating across the top, obviously, you know, but we have all 7 review pages done. I just get so nervous because I really want it to look good, but I feel like my collaging skills aren't great. I feel like I'm wasting so much of it because it's behind the snake. So if I could just put that piece somewhere else. Before I go too much further, I should make the tag, and that's gonna get placed It's difficult because everything's so green. I think it's gotta be this piece. It's the only piece that I feel like fits properly. That's not bad. I don't think it's my favorite collage that I've done. I think that was February. Now, we're gonna do the stats page for March. So we usually lay it out with books and pages up at the top, average length here, genre, and then where we got it from and what format.
decorated. Now I just have to fill in our information here. Ooh, you can hardly read that. It's a 7. We've finished our second stats page. I think that they turned out pretty cute. We can do a quick flip through of our March pages. I'm going to set up the April tracking pages, starting with our calendar here, of course. Here is our calendar. I read a lot more this month than I have in previous months, I guess. I mean, I read a lot of books. I got into audiobooks, and then I read 4 of them in a row. I'm gonna decorate this page, and then we will also do our book club page. I officially gave up on the good book, so now I only have 2 book club books, and I read neither of them for the month of April. So I tried. I put them on hold at the library, and I didn't get either of them before the month was up, so. So the theme I've decided on for the month of April is this fun, like, rainy sort of theme. I don't know, it's been raining recently. I was in a rainy mood. April this year for us was actually surprisingly dry compared to how it usually is, so maybe I was missing the stormy weather. We've only really started to get the rain and the storms now that we're in May, which is a bit unusual. Should I put a little cloud here? Would that be cute? Would that be cute? Would that be the cutest thing ever? Guys, I got glue all over my nice hardwood table. Don't tell my boyfriend.
What did you do?
I got glue on the table.
How?
I know. I tried to make it straight, I swear. Just went curvy on me. You know how it is. Or maybe you don't know how it is. I don't know, you. Ah! Now, why was that so scary? Wah, bam! Look at that. Ooh, don't look. Maybe look. Look, but also don't look. Schrodinger's look. Ah, it's upside down! Why didn't any of you tell me? I almost misspelled that one too. I think I might have misspelled it. I think I might have misspelled it in March. Hang on, should we check? I forgot the R! It says fillers. Oh, guys. Did I misspell it in February too? I did! I misspelled it in February too! What have I done? I've spelled thrillers wrong every month this year, I think. Yep, every single month I've spelled it fillers. Look at that, fillers, and then you go to February and it's spelled fillers, and then you go to March and it's spelled fillers.
Baby.
What have I done? I'm so ashamed. Genre. Oh my gosh. Everybody in this household, as soon as I'm trying to work, it's just so loud.
For the month of April is Burned. After Heath is killed by Kelowna, Zoe's shattered soul is doomed to wander the other world forever, unless her warrior Stark can get her to pull herself together. Meanwhile, Nefret builds her power by consorting with ancient darkness. Okay. We've officially jumped the shark. There is so much weird bad stuff that's introduced in this book, and a lot of it is not relevant. So, Zoe's soul is shattered and stuck in the other world. So Stark, as her warrior, is going to go in there and get her out. However, there isn't really a way to do that without him dying, so they go to the Isle of Skye, which is this, like, Scottish island. Stark is only allowed in because he has Scottish heritage, I guess. There, the Vampire Queen and her guardian teach Stark about the masculine power of the black and white bulls, who are ancient representatives of light and darkness. Then they slice him up and send him to the other world. Does that make any sense? No? Okay, good. It's fine. We also get the introduction of old magic, which is the bane of my existence throughout the rest of the series. Its main limitation seems to be that it isn't very common throughout the rest of the world, and then so many threats going forward are the result of old magic or are solved using old magic. So is it common or not? The bulls also don't make any sense because we're explicitly told that whenever one of the bulls manifests, the other will appear to balance the world. But the white bull, darkness, I know, confusing. The dark bull is light and the white bull is darkness, I know. He's manifesting all the time and we never really see the black bull appear to fight him. I can picture one time in the series where he appears unsummoned to fight the white bull. Okay. Nefrit is also entering her annoying era. She's so whiny and bratty, and she basically has zero presence. It's kind of interesting because she's acting like a narcissist, but I find it really hard to believe that anyone is still taking her seriously when she's basically entirely transparent about being evil. She's calling herself Nyx incarnate, for fuck's sake. Like, come on, man. You think that if somebody came down and was like, I'm God incarnate, you would take them seriously? No. No. This book sucks. I would give Burned 1.5 stars.
Alright. You'll have to excuse the constantly changing lighting. There have been a lot of storms while I've been filming, so the light has been changing pretty often. Why is it whenever I start filming, my dogs immediately are like, I want a crunchy snack. Are you having a crunch? She is having a crunch munch.
We're officially over halfway done with the House of Night series. Bear with me. Awakened. Nefrit is newly exonerated by the Vampire High Council for the murder of Heath, and she returns to her position as High Priestess of the Tulsa House of Night. Zoe is tasked with stopping her, but she doesn't want to leave the Isle of Skye. The Vampire Queen there has offered to train her in the ways of old magic, and Zoe fears the stress and responsibilities that await her in the outside world. Will she shirk her responsibilities or face her destiny? This is actually mostly a Stevie Ray and Refame-focused book, which was a smart move because there is nothing going on with Zoe for the first third of this book. There's a group of rogue red fledglings who have chosen the path of darkness and are on Nefrit's side. How they're acting in this book is as much of a threat as they'll ever be, so that's a bit of a shame. I would have expected them to be more important to the final outcome, or at least be reporting back information to Nefrit, but they never really do. Zoe is, yet again, being extremely annoying, but she's kind of justified this time. She is just a teenager, she's 17, and she's had the weight of the world placed on her shoulders again and again. It makes sense that she would want to avoid that, but if she avoids her responsibilities, literally everyone dies and she knows this. She's seen it in a vision, so she needs to get over it. She only returns to House of Night because one of her friends was murdered. I just really don't like her as a protagonist if I haven't made that clear. The ending of this book, like the last chapter, was pretty good though. It was a big shock when I was a kiddo and it got me pretty excited for the next book, but I would still give Awakened only 1.5 stars. Next up is Destined. Zoe is back at the House of Night and facing off against Nefrit again, but this time she has a new mysterious guardian named Aurochs. Zoe can't shake the feeling that there's something familiar about him, and her old magic sensing seer stone glows red hot whenever he's around. What is Aurochs and why is Zoe so drawn to him? The issue is at this point in the series, the world building is so weird and bloated that even if something interesting is introduced, it still makes me roll my eyes. Of course, it's another new thing to keep track of and add to the list of ever-expanding lore. That's how I feel about both Shaylin and Aurochs. Shaylin is the first girl to ever be marked as a red fledgling and not have to go through the whole dying and becoming undead thing. Shaylin was also blind, and being marked cured her blindness. Something about that sits a little weird with me, but I'm not an expert in disability sensitivity, so I'm not going to say anything else. When Shaylin was marked, she was also gifted with an affinity called True Sight, meaning she can see people's auras. I think that the True Sight is used super strangely. It's like a shortcut to show the audience who is good and who is bad without having to do the legwork of writing a downfall or redemption. It just feels really lazy, and I don't like it. I liked Aurochs though. He has Heath's soul inside him, but he's not entirely Heath, so he still has his own character. He also continues the overall theme of the series of finding humanity and choosing light. I also like that he's literally a wearable, like a werewolf. That's insane, but also so funny. Why? Why? Anyway, I gave Destined 1 star. This book sucked, as do all of them. We are almost there. We've got 3 books left. Next up is Hidden. The dark murder that Nefert committed to make her vessel Aurochs has been exposed, and she's officially shunned by the High Council and Vampire Society as a whole. She's not going to give up on her commitment to darkness, and now she officially hates Zoe more than ever. Zoe saw something explicable through her Seer Stone when she looked at Aurochs at the end of the last book, and she doesn't know how to tell her friends without seeming crazy. I don't know how anything could seem crazy at this point, based off what they've been through, but I don't know. Everyone's stupid, I guess. Okay. I hate the character assassination of Erin that was pulled out of nowhere. Like, Erin is one of the members of the Nerd Herd. She's been with them this entire time. She has a water affinity gifted to her by Nyx. Okay, she was a little shallow and a little bitchy, a little catty at times, but she's repeatedly put her life on the line to fight for light. I am completely convinced that the authors just wanted Shaylin in the circle because they like her power and they think she's interesting, so they had to get Erin out of the way somehow. So they turned her into like this evil, icy, catty woman who just switches sides on a dime. It's really weird and irritating. And the frustrating thing is that I could really see this working if it played out correctly. If it was less abrupt and had better reasoning, it could be cool to see a powerful fledgling like Erin switch sides and be tempted by the darkness. But no, it was so shoehorned in. The only thing that justified it was that she had always felt cold inside. She had never really felt emotions, but we didn't see that. She cried, she laughed, I don't know. They just tried to make her like a sociopath and it didn't work. Something I really loved about this book was Grandma Redbird, Zoe's grandmother. I really loved her relationship with Aurochs. I'm sure there are a ton of stereotypes and appropriation of Cherokee culture in these books. I don't know enough to say what exactly, but I'm sure it's not great. But Grandma Redbird has always been really loving and a lovable character. It's nice to have someone talk to Aurochs and set him on the right path just by not seeing him as a monster. I also really liked the face-off between Nefert and Grandma Redbird. It makes sense that Nefert would hate her. The way Nefert was defeated in this book was kind of strange. She's shown an image of herself in the mirror on the night her father assaulted her. There's just so much rape in this series, and then you add incest on top of that. Icky! Ew! Especially for a YA series. Ew! Don't do that! Do not do that! Don't do that! It's gross! Stop. I would give Hidden 1 star.
Finally, we're on the last House of Night books. Finally.
Revealed. Nefert is drastically changed by the death of her physical form in the last book, but she is an immortal and comes back swinging. When the mayor of Tulsa is found drained of blood on House of Night campus, obviously a vampire is to blame. Mistrust from humans begins to mount, but Zoe has to worry about more than a human-vampire war. Old magic seems to be manifesting in her, and she starts to lose control. I don't know why this book exists. Nefert is in a coma for 95% of the page count. We get her entire backstory told to us via dream flashbacks too, which is weird because to my understanding there is also a whole novella about Nefert and her life. I think that the story itself is kind of interesting in establishing who Nefert was, how she gathered her influence, and how she turned from Nyx, etc. But it really was not necessary, and I don't understand why it was included. Zoe is also annoying! She's so annoying! She has a weird connection to old magic in this book, since using it to attack Nefert at the climax of the last book. What I think is strange is that Zoe has not learned her lesson for the 1 billionth time. She is keeping secrets again, wanting to do everything herself, isolating herself. Zoe is a teenager, but by this point she should be an open book to her inner circle for the good of the universe. I understand why she wouldn't trust some people, especially after Erin's betrayal in the last book, but it is never framed like that, you know? At the very least, she should be telling Stevie Ray everything. The one lesson that we've learned over and over and over again is do not keep secrets. Don't do it. She's also seemingly tempted by darkness, going into some fits of rage, but it's not really meaningful. All Zoe does with this is push 3 people, and then she immediately gets over this anger in the next book. No lasting consequences at all. This book was boring and bad. I give it 1 star. I give Revealed 1 star. 1 star for Revealed.
Last The dogs are being crazy. I'm just gonna accept it. Last House of Night book, finally.
Oh my god. It's the last book. I can finally stop talking about House of Night. Okay. Nefert has finally dropped all pretenses and has gone full vengeful immortal goddess. She takes over a hotel, demanding that all inside must do her bidding and worship her under threat of death or worse. With Zoe in prison after confessing to the murders of 2 creepy men in a park that she pushed using old magic, will the nerd herd be able to take her down? This book is ridiculously bad. I kind of enjoyed it. In like a super weird way. A bunch of Redeemed takes place from Nefert's perspective, and she is just fully in evil mode. It's a bit cathartic after having her slink around and get away with being terrible for 11 books at this point. The bad part is she's just a completely different character. She is stupid and really childish, and she doesn't seem to have any greater plan. She's just doing stuff because. Also, she keeps using the word supplicant. It's used 1,000 times. Supplicant this, you're my supplicant that, well, my loyal supplicants. Oh my god, it was actually unbearable. It was unbearable. Zoe and her friends also totally failed to save anyone for this entire story. They're trying to fight Nefert and figure out how to save the hostages, and then they don't. And literally no one cares. No one even mentions it. No one feels guilty about it. What the hell? There was no real sense of urgency. Zoe's just chilling around campus, worrying about how to use her seer stone. Girl, hurry up. People are dying. Girl. I hate that Kelowna got redeemed, and also everything he ever wanted with Nyx. What the hell? My man waged war and enslaved men and assaulted women and had evil raven babies for like a century. And then he gets to be with the girl that he wants at the end? What the hell? Also, the ending was pretty meh. I liked that Nefert got defeated by Aurochs, so technically it was her own magic that took her down. I really wish there was more falling action, though. Like, they defeated Nefert and the book ended a few pages later. Also, all of the members of the Circle turn into full vamps at the end, which is weird because Shaylin is in the Circle and she's been a vampire fledgling for like 2 weeks. Girl, you are not ready to be an adult vampire. But my biggest pet peeve is that we don't get any description of what their full tattoos look like. What? I'm so upset. It's so bad. This book is so bad. I gave it 1 star, but that's only because I rounded up. It was 0.75 stars because it sucked.
I can finally talk about books that are not The House of Night, because I did read another, how many? 5 books this month? I'm never reading this many books again.
Finally, we can talk about some good books, starting with In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. Jessica Miller wants to make an unforgettable impression at her university's 10-year reunion, but a murder from her past threatens to drag her and all of her college friends into a dangerous mystery. They're all keeping secrets, but one of them is keeping the worst secret of all. They killed Heather. Heather's younger brother is determined to trap the killer, and Jessica isn't so innocent herself. I really enjoyed In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. The story was really compelling, and I was always on the edge of my seat, waiting to find out what happened next. I think the structure was really good as well. It started in the present timeline at the reunion, and then flowed into flashbacks for us to find out the answers. So we would get some questions in the present, and then answers in the past, and then answers in the past and questions in the present, and I just think that that flow is really interesting. I also really like Jessica as a protagonist. She sucks so much. She's an awful person. The author did a really good job at making her likable and relatable despite having massive flaws. Jessica is a girl that should be successful and popular. She's smart and hardworking and pretty as well, but somehow she's always overlooked and forgotten, and she has a lot of trauma related to that. A lot of the truly awful things she does comes from this deep-seated need to be seen and successful. So even when she does things like cheat on her long-term boyfriend, we understand. Mint, her boyfriend, is the golden boy at their school. He's rich, he's handsome, he's successful and popular. He turns Jessica into someone just by being within his orbit, just by dating him. Jessica is suddenly important, but she doesn't really love him. So when she cheats on him, it's kind of relatable. Like, girl, I get it. Technically, Jessica didn't do anything to Heather, but what she does to Heather is possibly the most heinous act in the entire story. I don't want to fully spoil because I really recommend that you do read this book. I listened to the audiobook and I think it was excellent. So I would highly recommend the audiobook. The cast of the story is pretty big, but everyone has a distinct voice, and they all have important parts to play. The way their secrets and stories are revealed are good, and it creates this sense of escalating tension. I did call who the killer was going to be from really early in the story, but the way everything unfolded was still really well done and super enjoyable. The writing was good too. I don't think any of the prose was especially memorable, though. It was sort of just passable. It's like good prose you don't notice and great prose you do, and I would put this in the category of good prose. I felt like Duquette, the university, was a well-described place, but that might just be because it was Duke with a sillier sounding name. Like, I'm 99% sure that it's Duke. And they just called it Duquette. Girl, what? But I liked it. I thought it was funny. Definitely give this one a read if you like a twisty thriller. Jessica is a character I'm going to be thinking about for a really long time. I gave In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife 4 stars. Next up is 56 Days. So 56 days ago, Kira and Oliver met in the supermarket in Dublin, Ireland, and hit it off. They tentatively start dating, but COVID-19 is just arriving in Ireland. So when a 2-week lockdown threatens to break apart the newly budding relationship, Oliver invites Kira to stay with him for the duration of lockdown. She agrees, enticed by the idea of building a relationship without outside intervention. However, now detectives arrive at Oliver's apartment to investigate reports of a dead body inside. What happened during this lockdown? I know a lot of people really don't want to read about COVID-19 while escaping into a book, but I thought the premise of 56 Days was really interesting. Unfortunately, I think this book suffers from its premise. There isn't a lot to do during lockdown, so once that happens in the story, there is very little going on outside of the conversations and internal thoughts that the characters are having. Kira is incredibly nervous, way more than simple social anxiety. It was to the point of being a little bit annoying. I had to put the book down and walk away because I was like, girl, get it together. But there is a decent enough reason for it. Oliver is a very private, guarded man, and we find out that he's been hounded by journalists about an incident that happened in his past. It's a decent setup. Because nothing happens, though, it's really hard to talk about this book without just talking about the twists and entirely spoiling it. Like, a lot of the tension comes from just reading it yourself, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend you skip ahead, because I am going to spoil everything in the spoiler section, okay? Seriously, because I can't talk about it without spoiling it. So the big twist is that Oliver is a famous child killer, both in that he killed a child and was a child who killed. He was a child who killed another child. He and another boy drowned a 10-year-old in a river when they were 12 years old. I thought the twist was that Kira was the sister of the 10-year-old boy, but it turns out she's actually the sister of the accomplice. Her brother had gotten a longer sentence than Oliver because Oliver framed the brother as the ringleader, but it was actually Oliver who was the initiator and the ringleader. What essentially happens, why there's a body in the tub, is because Oliver doesn't sleep much, so he takes roofies to sleep. And he discovers that Kira isn't who she said she was right after he's taken a roofie. And he panics and slips and falls in the bathtub because he's trying to splash some cold water on his face. And he's laying there passing out. He accidentally turned on the water when he fell. Kira rushes in and she turns off the water. He's just laying in the tub, sort of out of it. He hit his head really hard. And she's telling him, oh, it's gonna be okay. And then he confesses that he lied and he was the initiator and he should have gotten a longer sentence, but he framed her brother essentially. And so Kira just turns the tap back on and lets him drown. The end. This all happens in the last 80 pages, and it's the only exciting, active part of the book, really. There's just not a lot going on. There's not a lot of prose either. The writing style is really weird too. The narration basically never says their names, just calling them he and she. I can't explain it super well, but if you read some sample pages, I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. It'll be for pages at a time, he did this, he did that, he said this, she said this, he said that, she said this, it's just really weird. It's really weird. I can't describe it. If you read it, I'm sure you'll notice it's odd. I guess I'd recommend 56 Days if you like a slower, more psychological thriller. The meat of the book is a little bit lacking. Maybe read it if you have a free afternoon. I gave 56 Days 3 stars, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I'm being a little generous. I think it was a 2.5, you know? Next up, we have Wilder Girls, a young adult horror novel, which I didn't know existed. I thought we went from Goosebumps to adult horror, but apparently young adult horror exists. Raxter School for Girls is on an isolated island, so when an outbreak of a mysterious disease starts infecting the students, the entire island was quarantined. The disease changes their bodies, mutating them with no rhyme or reason, but it doesn't just affect humans. The trees and the animals outside of the school have grown stranger and wilder, so no one dares leave. But when Hetty's closest friend, Byatt, disappears after a flare-up of the tox, Hetty will do anything to find her, including breaking the quarantine. The premise of Wilder Girls is so good, for me specifically. I love stories about plagues and outbreaks, so I thought this would be a slam dunk for me, extremely up my alley. Unfortunately, not. The middle section of this novel is extremely dead, and the ending was so outside the realm of reality that it instantly dropped a whole star rating. I also didn't really enjoy the explanation for what the tox is, but I'll get to it. Our main character is Hetty. She doesn't really have a distinct personality or voice. She's just really loyal to Byatt, and that's all I can really remember about her. I suppose she's intelligent, I guess, but she fell flat. Hetty was mutated by the tox to have one eye that's permanently sealed shut, but sometimes it weeps blood, and occasionally she can feel something moving under the eyelid. I love body horror, so I was ready to get into some weird shit, but it doesn't really go in that direction. There's like offhand mentions of it, and a moment or two with animals outside the gate that were really good, but I don't think it's utilized to its full potential. The other two characters are Byatt, who is Hetty's closest friend with a secondary bony spine growing from her back, and Reese, a standoffish girl with a hand covered in silver scales. Byatt develops a new mutation from a flare-up of the tox and is taken by the CDC, and Hetty wants to find her. Okay, I'm just gonna list things that I think are whack because I could talk about this book for ages. My review on this book is so long, but I don't want to keep you here for the rest of your entire life, okay? So here we go. 1. There is a romance between Hetty and Reese. I think it's totally realistic. For sure, you're living on an isolated island with a bunch of girls, and this is sort of one of your closer friends. I get it. It definitely makes sense. But it feels like it comes out of nowhere. They didn't really have good chemistry, and there was basically no build-up, and then they broke up like 20 pages after they got together. I think the reason that they broke up is also valid, but why put them together and then immediately tear them apart? That doesn't make any sense. 2. What is wrong with Byatt? It's implied that there's something weird about her psychologically, including before she came to Raxter and got the tox. She was weirdly manipulative as a child and was prone to lying for no real reason. I don't know. She's also really strange when being tested by the CDC. Byatt convinces a 19-year-old CDC tech, weird, to make out with her, and obviously gives him the tox and he dies. What? This is a huge thing that sets the rest of the plot in motion, but I'm like, Byatt, are you actually a psychopath? What's wrong with you? Why did you just give this man the tox? What the hell? 3. Because Hetty and Reese broke quarantine and Byatt killed one of the researchers, they decide to bomb the island and kill all of the infected girls. Hetty also accidentally leaves the gate open when she comes back in, letting a giant mutated bear into the school. The CDC also gave them a thing of toxic gas so they could die before the bombs were dropped. This is just too many crazy things happening at once. Pick one and focus on it. The climax is so weird and it jumps around like crazy. Just pick one. Pick one threat. The giant bear or the CDC or the gas. Pick one. Because it was just like everything kept going and going and going and going, and I didn't even know what we were doing. You know? I don't know what we're doing. 4. The tox. What is the tox? I hear you asking, what is the tox? I will answer. What is the tox? The tox is a worm-like parasite. Okay, sure. The tox essentially was like a parasite that was frozen in permafrost and global warming, and somehow it came down from the Arctic Circle into Raxter School for Girls, which is never really described where it is. I think it's maybe in the northeast of the United States. It felt Canadian, but I don't know if it's Canadian. I don't know. If it's a parasite, how is it affecting non-living objects? Like, okay, I am willing to believe that a worm can affect trees. I don't know if it can. I don't know. I don't know if a worm can affect trees, but trees can get parasites, right? But plants can get parasites, okay. And obviously I'm willing to believe it affects humans and animals. But It's said in the book that the tox is causing buildings to decay faster than they usually would, but I'm pretty sure a parasitic worm can't do that. I'm also pretty sure a parasitic worm can't alter your DNA and give you a second spine. I don't think a parasite has ever been able to do that. I mean, I get it, it's a book, it's fiction, but I would be more willing to believe something that is not a parasite. Why would it give each girl a unique flare-up? Like, it's described that it's trying to evolve them, but what? How? How does having a second spine help you? I don't get it. How does having only one eye help you? I don't know. Is the parasite what Hetty felt moving underneath her eye? I'm not buying the explanation for the tox. I'm not buying it. The writing is also really stiff, especially in Byatt's chapters. It was draining to listen to. She was drugged for a lot of the book, so it makes sense, I guess, but it wasn't pleasant to listen to. It was really choppy, it was really stop and start. I didn't enjoy it. I don't think I can really recommend Wilder Girls. It's not very immersive, and I think there are some major character and story issues that needed to be worked out. It does kind of remind me of Darkwood though, so if you like this idea, I might recommend you play the game Darkwood. It's hard, but the story is pretty cool. I gave Wilder Girls 2.5 stars. Next up is Daisy Darker. So Daisy Darker's family comes together for the first time in many years to celebrate Nana Darker's 80th birthday in her gothic house on a tiny tidal island. So when the tide comes in, they'll be completely cut off from the shore until morning, especially with a massive thunderstorm rolling in. At the stroke of midnight, Nana is found dead, and it doesn't appear to be an accident. Daisy Darker and her family are trapped for 8 hours, and one of them is a killer. I have no words. I have no words for this book. There is so much nothing that happens in this novel, and I truly do not think there was any way to fix it. I think that this was broken from the start. This is not a mystery novel. If you are going to read this book, do not read it as a mystery novel. It's not a thriller. Do not read it like that. I don't think it should have been marketed as such. This is specifically an exploration of a family, specifically one family's neglect and emotional abuse of one of their daughters. I think if the author dropped the mystery part entirely, this present day mystery part, and just told it as like a contemporary story, contemporary literature, this would be a way better book. Everything compelling that happens during flashbacks, and the flashbacks make up the majority of the book. This book pulls possibly my least favorite trope of all time. Daisy Darker is the youngest sibling in her family, and she was born with a quote-unquote broken heart, an unnamed heart condition. This also means that she wasn't allowed to go to school or do what her sisters were doing, and she was often neglected. She's also died multiple times in her past, meaning her heart stopped and she had to have it restarted. If I wanted to get all art critic about it, I could say that each death represents a different aspect of her life dying or being taken away from her because of her condition, but I don't want to get all art critic. This book doesn't deserve it. Everyone in this family does not talk to Daisy because of an incident that happened many, many years ago. Daisy Darker is also dead. Yes, seriously. She is a ghost throughout the whole story. This is the twist. The twist is that Daisy is dead. This is what we find out at the 85% mark. Daisy's sisters, plus their close family friend, accidentally killed her. She was hit by their car after a party, and they all panicked because the driver was drunk and he didn't have a license. They thought she was dead, so the family friend convinces them to throw her body over the edge of the cliffs and make it look like an accident, like she just fell. But as they let her drop, they realized that she was alive, just stunned by getting hit by the car. Girl. What? Messy. But I liked that. I liked that story. I actually thought that was good. I liked the flashbacks. I like the murder, but I hate that she was a ghost. It turns out Nana was killing the family. Each of the family members is dying one at a time to avenge Daisy. Oh yeah, Grandma is actually alive and behind the whole thing, and the niece of the family can see Daisy because the niece has the same heart condition and has died. Girl, it's so stupid. It's so stupid, and not to mention every character in this story is stupid as hell. After the first death, instead of sticking together, the family all split up and run off, and then somebody else gets killed, and then they all come back together, and then they split up and run off, and then somebody else gets killed. When they are together, instead of watching for who might be the killer, they all get distracted by watching old home movies that the killer is able to kidnap and kill multiple people who are in the same room where everyone is watching the tapes. What do you mean? All of you were so engrossed in the TV screen that you didn't see somebody being murdered? What the hell? No one has any sense in this story. It's extremely painful to read. I don't want to think about this book for another second. I'm sure there's more I could say. There were even parts I enjoyed, but it's all overshadowed by how frustrated and bored I was. I cannot recommend this. Don't read it unless you want to, and then do. I gave Daisy Darker 1 star. Yes, it was worse than some of the House of Night books. I'm sorry. At least they were entertaining.
Can you see this bruise I'm getting on my finger from writing so much? That's horrendous. Last book for the month, lucky number 11. Oh my gosh, I read so many books in April.
Last book I read in the month of April was Such a Lovely Family. The Calhoun family seems totally perfect. Thomas and Ginny have a beautiful, long-lasting marriage, financial success, and 3 children. But is everything as perfect as it seems? A murder at their annual garden party threatens to spill all of the family's secrets, and everyone has a reason to want the victim dead. The only question is who acted on those urges. I have so much nothing to say about this book. It's pretty forgettable. That's not me saying that it was bad. It was a totally passable read, but there is nothing deeper than the surface here. So much so that I'm not even going to do a spoiler section. There were a lot of twists and turns, but I think there was almost too many. I was getting a little bit of twist fatigue. It did keep me guessing about who the culprit was, and I was actually way off. I give them kudos for being able to make everyone such a solid suspect that each person was supported with enough evidence to make it plausible. But I also think that that's kind of the problem. You know what it felt like? Have you ever been to a murder mystery dinner theater? The way some of them operate is that there is an ending for each and every character to have done it, and they'll randomly select who the culprit is at the end of the show, or they'll select it based off of who had the least votes for the night, so it's the biggest twist. So if you go to the show more than once, you're surprised every time at who the culprit was. So when I found out who the killer was, there wasn't this exciting moment of like, oh, it all finally makes sense. It was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess it could have been them, just like it could have been anybody else. The writing was fine, again, just kind of unnoticeable. And I do love reading about rich characters being miserable assholes. It gives me like, what's the word, schadenfreude? I guess I would recommend it if you have an afternoon to burn, if you're on a plane, if you're sitting around the pool. I listened to it while I was sick, and it was a fine way to pass the time. So I gave Such a Lovely Family 3 stars. Very mid. Very mid.
Right, all done with the reviews. My hand is killing me. So now we just have to do our stats page and then our nice collage here at the front. So we're gonna do our collage page at the front of the chapter here. I have a lot of different rain themed pieces here. Rain, clouds, stuff like that. Yeah, it's ripping up a little more than I would like it to, but you know, that's the risk you take when you glue something down and then tear it back up, so. It's hard for me not to want to rip it because I'm like, oh, everything looks better ripped. But if everything's ripped, then you don't get any contrast. I think that this looks good. Let's just see how it compares to our others. So that's February. That's March. That's April. I feel like it's cute. So now, our stats page. We've got everything glued in for our stats page. We have everything glued in for our stats page. Now we just have to fill in the information. Our first stats page, I should say. I hit a new record of books read in the month of April, which is 11. Thank you, ebooks. Not ebooks, audiobooks. 3,577. 325 pages. A lot of young adult fantasy because of the House of Night books. I am very excited to be done with those. So this is our first stats page. Now we just have to do the back stats page, which is going to have on it our ratings, our best and worst of the month, and our notes section. Overwhelmingly 1-star reads this month. Sorry, that's not funny, but it kind of is. Like, I rated 0 books 5 stars and 5 books 1 star. I believe that's all I put on the second stats page. After all of that, we'll go through each of my before pages, like my book bingo and that kind of thing, and update those there. So I've said this in a previous video, but I keep track of the reading tracker day to day instead of updating it in a video now, just because it's too hard to go back through and figure out exactly how many pages I read per day. I have gotten no further 5-star reads. We're still only at 1 5-star read, but if we look over here at our book battle, next month I'm going to decide which to move on from these 3 books into this category here. Actually, what do you think? Should I should I fill in until June before deciding on the bracket that moves forward? But the best book I read in March was Dark Matter. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The best book I read in April was In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife. I am approaching the halfway point of the year, so I think that's what I'll do. I'll get to the halfway point and then we'll move on to our next tier. Next up are A to Z challenges. Now, something in particular for the A to Z challenges, I am not putting any of the House of Night books on the A to Z challenge. And it's partially just because I don't want like half of my A to Z challenge to be filled with House of Night books. That would be vaguely embarrassing for me, so I'm not gonna do it. What I can add this month is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So that gives me a title one, but obviously doesn't give me an author one because I already have Darcy Coates on there. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is also going to be added to the titles here. That's all of my titles for now. As for authors, I get to add an author to the B section because I read something by Aggie Blum Thompson. I read Such a Lovely Family by Aggie Blum Thompson. Ah yes, for R, we get 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. Another 3-person name, interesting. Ooh, and we also get a W for Ashley Winstead for In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I feel like I should add some sort of like sticker or something next to each completed letter so that I know that they're complete. I think that's a good way to show what is and isn't complete. Next up, we have our Medical Examiners Challenge. So our medical examiner challenge is looking good. We are approaching the bottom of the list here, which is pretty exciting. I have no idea what I'm gonna do if I run out of space. I have not continued reading any books for my Decades challenge. I do need to pick it back up though, because in order to complete it, I need to read 1 a month, and I accidentally read 3 in 1 month in February. So I was a little bit ahead, but now I gotta pick it back up to keep up. For the Dark Academia challenge, I do actually, I think Wilder Girls counts as Dark Academia because it takes place at like a school, a boarding school. But I didn't print anything for it just to make sure. I don't know. I'm still deciding whether or not it fits, but still nothing on the Dark Academia front. I have a whole bunch of TBR'd books, and I actually have a whole bunch of them on hold at the library as well. So hopefully this will be getting filled sometime soon because it's a little embarrassing that it's totally blank. As for this one, I have not read any new horror novels. I read a book that was supposed to be a horror novel, specifically a gothic horror novel, which is not. Daisy Darker was said to be a gothic horror novel. It's not a horror novel, it's just a thriller. So I read it for no reason, and also I hated it. So I'm a little mad, but I have a whole bunch of other books on the TBR for this as well. If you want to see my TBR, I think it's public on both Storygraph and Goodreads. I am After Plague on both websites. I track them pretty religiously, especially on Goodreads. I tend to take notes while I'm reading. I've been a little bit slacking on it because I've been listening to audiobooks recently, but I promise I'll pick it back up. So anyway, long story short, nothing new on the horror subgenre. For book bingo, I do think we actually have a few new things. First of all, in just our overall book bingo, something published in 2024, Such a Lovely Family was first published in 2024, so that's gonna go there. And it's also going to go in the thriller bingo on neighbors involved, because the neighbors were involved. Technically, I could put any one of the House of Night books in the single word title because they all have a single word title, but I don't think I've got anything else on that list. Let me look at my thrillers. Oh, female detective, I can do 56 Days. I feel like I could put Daisy Darker under audiobook just to fill in a space, even though I don't like it. And I feel like I could put In My Dreams I Hold a Knife in Characters Past Catches Up. And we will call that good for thriller bingo for now. I'm getting a lot of slots filled in. I'm pretty close to a bingo here, so Inspired by True Events and Highly Recommended. Here, Cozy Mystery and Highly Recommended. Serial Killer and Missing Person here. And Begins with a Disappearance and Cold Case here. So that's pretty exciting. Have I not been filming this entire time? No, I must have been. No, it stopped filming. It stopped filming because it was, I don't know when the camera stopped. I hope it wasn't too long ago. I'm still just filling out fucking House of Night books. Look at that long list of casts. Though, we are almost finished with our first page. We might run out of room here. If we do, I'll have to glue in an extra page. So let's do a flip through of everything that we've accomplished. I don't know why I'm using we. You didn't accomplish anything, except watching this long video. So for that, I guess you can feel pretty accomplished.
And that is it for my March and April reading wrap-up. Thank you so much for watching what is probably going to be quite a long video. And if you made it to the end, please send me a little comment about which book you are excited to read. If you have read any of these books, let me know what you think. Am I an asshole? Probably. But thank you so much for watching anyway. If you like this video, please leave me a like. And if you want to see more from me, subscribe. I am trying to upload every Saturday. So hopefully I'll see you next Saturday. If you want to see updates on what I'm working on, follow me on all of my social media. I am After Plague pretty much everywhere. That's Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, Goodreads, Storygraph. I'm After Plague on both of those websites. And I'm After_Plague on Twitter because somebody stole my username. I have a book that's out if you want to judge my book and write your own review about it. I would love, love, love to hear it. It's on my website, afterplague.myshopify.com. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you're reading some good books, and I hope you survive this post-plague world.